Hey, and welcome. This is actually week two of this new podcast, this new venture. Welcome to RiSE, the podcast. It's the weekly podcast that intends to bring positive change to the world. The podcast that defends small business owners, encourages creativity, new ideas, problem solving, independent critical thinking, finding a new path and a way forward with passion and some blood, sweat, and tears as well to make it happen. Each week we feature great guests who are making a difference for the good of man and womankind. And whether it's how we do business, leading at work, making communities stronger, eradicating things like poverty, or touting abundance, or new ways to heal and be healthy, or empowering youth to be all they can be and learn from our elders. This show is a weekly journey of ideas and solutions and new thinking that has you creating your own vision for where you want to be, and has us thinking of a global vision for where we want to be. And our guest today, in his beautiful office, is Patrick Linnell, and he's the co-founder of GraceBomb, which was established in 2018, which is that's good that you've had this idea for a while. And you're also a teaching pastor with an MA in theology from Columbia International University, with over 17 years as pastoral ministry. So you started young, man, because you look pretty spry there.
Well, thanks. Appreciate that.
Yeah. And Pat's passion is for creative exposition, practical application of the Bible, which led to a sermon series that sparked a fun and surprising movement of loving their neighbors with no strings attached. Pat is married to his high school sweetheart and has 4 kids. And he, after this, I think he's going to have a nap from raising 4 kids.
So yes, never a dull moment in this place.
I bet. So can you imagine a world where we're practicing random acts of kindness, better yet, loving your neighbor, or if you're not spiritual, maybe just striving to make someone's day a bit better? What would life look like if that was the norm? Grace bombs are intentional acts of love prompted by the Holy Spirit, offering an extra tip to a hardworking server, giving up a seat on an airplane, or making a meal for the ER nurse next door. Pat Linnell is the author of the book GraceBomb. Welcome to RiSE.
Hey, thank you so much, David, for having me. Great to be on the podcast, brother.
Yeah. Yeah. And I discovered you on TV here on Yes TV. And you were interviewed maybe a couple months ago, and then they're now doing Grace Bombs on the show, right?
Yes, this was our Canadian foray. You know, I feel like I'm part Canadian in that I grew up what would be considered in the South, in the United States to some, but I played ice hockey. And so I've had this connection with the ice and all things Canada from a young age. You can even see, if you have video.
Yes, I see it.
Little
tabletop hockey
table back there for the kids. So I was very excited when the TV station, got involved with helping people be more intentional about making the world a better place. It's one way of looking at it. And so very cool to be with you and expanding the international side of things.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah. It was 100 Huntley Street. And they as a result of your work and your book and the initiative and the movement you created, they've gone out and done Grace Bombs in their community too. So, yes. And that's what also, I got to interview this guy when I get this podcast up and running. So let me ask you, you wrote this has been something brewing since 2018. Mm-hmm. You wrote the book. It came out May 1st of this year. What prompted you to write the book and then start beginning this phenomena of loving kindness and grace? What was in you at that time to bring this to fruition?
Yeah, well, I think there's something in all of us that we kind of have this deep seated thing in our souls that we want to kind of make the world a better place. Mm-hmm. And I think regardless of your spiritual upbringing or church background or not, wherever you might fall on that spectrum, I feel like all of us as human beings, we share in um, this desire to see things get better. People are going to define that in a lot of different ways. And so I think that's there in all of us. But then specifically for me, my profession up to this point, like you said, I did kind of start early. It's a whole nother story, but I never really intended to be a pastor. I thought I was going to be a business guy, and a lot of things happen unexpectedly in life, and then all of a sudden you've worked at a church for 15 years, and it was kind of my story. But you can't bring people into the Bible without running into this theme of goodness and kindness and grace and love. And it was, from the Old Testament to the New Testament, there's a love story that's threaded all throughout those pages. And so, that was kind of like my text. I'm teaching this, I'm preaching this, and I'm running into this theme of grace over and over and over again. But there was a contrast, because in what I was trying to teach the people, love, grace, kindness, and obviously most of us have heard the golden rule, Jesus in the Sermon on the Mount, do unto others as would have them do unto you, and even loving your enemy, which speaks to the depths of how we're supposed to love our neighbor. We've run into these ancient commands. But the tension I was running up against was, we can hear love your neighbor all day, but that can be one of the hardest things to be out and about and to put into practice. And so we started to get creative. We started to get very practical and tangible. And at the time, with the team I was working with, we were asking the question, how can we take the average churchgoer, if you will, who's kind of shy, introverted, not out there with their faith by any means, just doing their thing. How can we help them to love their neighbor with no strings attached? And it was in that context that this idea of Grace Bomb was born. And so, we wanted to make it tangible and practical and everyday and easy for people to break the ice with their neighbors. And so we came up with this little card and a website that would help explain where it came from. And it became sort of like training wheels for helping people just to do something surprisingly awesome. I think all of us would say, yeah, I think I could get into doing something surprisingly awesome for my neighbor. But if that's like spiritually motivated, it can be awkward and you're not sure what to say. And, it's one of those things. I'm not supposed to talk about politics and religion with people. And part of loving your neighbor with no strings attached, it is deep and it's personal and it is spiritual. And so we wanted to help people break the ice. And that was sort of the context where this idea of grace bombing came from. The idea that you take an intentional act of love, of your time, expertise, of your treasure, and you let people know that it wasn't just completely random, but it was motivated by a deeper place, a deeper source. And hence, Grace Bomb pointing them to what could be just the tip of the iceberg of the source of love. And so the book was kind of like not even in existence when we're doing all this. We introduced the idea and we saw people go crazy using the Grace Bomb cards and the website. We were getting hundreds of stories coming in from all over the county down here. And I realized that was 2017. I realized we need to give this tool away to other communities because this became a great way to get out of your comfort zone. And so 2018, we gave it away. We formed a nonprofit. What the book really came from in the heart of the thing was the stories that were coming in, because we were seeing stories of people who had been loved, who were deeply starved for love, and they have these dramatic, complicated things going on in their life, and it seemed like just at the right time and in the right place someone stepped out and loved them. And then we were seeing the other side of the story when people were finally just coming out of their shell to do something for their neighbor. And when I received those real life stories, I said, this is what we've been missing. So I took stories from the movement. I took stories from the Bible, and I took stories from my own life. And that's really what became the Grace Bomb book, later to be, picked up by a publisher. And then, as you had mentioned, published a few months ago, and now it's out about in the world. But it started with seeing potential and realizing there's so much untapped potential in people and their ability to do awesome things for their neighbors. So that's sort of the impetus and where it came from.
Yeah. So since the book came out May 1st, so what's the response been like since? Like you are Rarity, have seen some remarkable stories and things happening in people and in kindness being shared, and in also people stepping out, and because it's honestly, you have to be a bit brave in order to do that, because you don't want to rock the boat. I don't want to, but so since the book came out May 1st, what have you seen since? Has it exploded? Has it gone beyond your imagination? Where is it today on this, August 27th that we're recording?
That's a great question. And I'm going to keep it completely real for your listeners, because, you're also, what I heard in the intro is you're speaking to entrepreneurs and people trying to make the world a better place and bringing new ideas to life. And I really appreciate all of that. And, particularly when it comes to writing a book, I think there's a misconception or a false summit, if you will, that, okay, if I can get my idea into the hands of an agent, and I can get that agent to get a publisher, and then I can get a publisher to put it out into the world, and then it's released into the world. It's kind of like, in some ways, that process by itself takes a lot of hustle, a lot of work, a lot of time, a lot of grinding. And it comes out into the world, and you're waiting for the parade, and you're waiting for the, everything to change. But the reality is, and I think for entrepreneurs, when they hit a milestone, because certainly publishing a book is a milestone, but then you get to that summit or plateau and you realize, oh, this isn't the top. I've actually, now that I have my idea positioned in such a way that it could be broadly accessed, now the real work begins of having to keep climbing to get word out. Because for me in particular, I had relative small town notoriety because we had a relatively large church for the area. But that means nothing in the stratosphere of ideas out in the national sphere. And so, in other words, let me translate that. I'm a nobody out there. Just because you publish a book, does it make you anything?
No, I know. I've got two. So,
but I think the lesson and the takeaway is, if you still see the untapped potential of the idea that you're trying to bring to life and to make the world a better place, celebrate the milestone when you arrive. And so we did have a good launch, and Amazon, did a big order, and we were a bestseller for a little bit right there in the beginning. And now we're just kind of like slowly and steady continuing to get the word out about the content. And, we had cool things like podcasts and radio and Canadian TV shows and that sort of thing. But for me, I can honestly say, well, now that it's out into the world, the real work begins, because you're bringing an idea, even though it's cool and novel and fun and doable and accessible and all those things. You're bringing an idea into a realm of so many messages being bombarded on so many people.
Oh man. Yeah. Overwhelmed.
And I think that is kind of that entrepreneurial spirit, that there's still work to do. That's kind of what has been on my heart lately, is this is just the beginning in a lot of ways. I'm celebrating, all the cool things and the publicity and some of the media and all of that. But my goal in writing the book was that somebody who wanted to love their neighbor, but never really got out of their shell to do something in a way that they've never done before, if I can help that person take that next baby step, then I'm accomplishing my goal. And so I kind of have my eyes set on that. Maybe one day it'll just go on a tear and I'll come back on the podcast and you can say, Pat, what's it like to have been on the New York Times bestseller list for 30 weeks in a row? And I'll say, well, Dave, let me tell you, it's the best. And, maybe that's the trajectory. But right now I'm kind of celebrating the fact that a kid from Maryland with, zero movement and a lot of cool things happening all over the place. So I celebrate that, but I realize, man, we have a long way to go.
Yeah. So now the message, of course, is based in teachings of Christianity, but it also incorporates, other spiritual truths like do unto others, karma, love God, love your neighbor and love God, that kind of thing. And it is the idea or principle, loving your neighbor as yourself, is really sort of central to the theme. So your market so far has been focused on grace bombs at churches across North America, getting them to embrace this concept and getting their parishioners to participate and to actively take part. How have churches begun to embrace the book and the actions of sharing a little joy, love, and grace?
Yeah, well, I tell you, first I'll preface it by saying I love churches. I love these local communities of faith. They're not perfect. They can be very messy. They can be not all they're intended to be at times, but I have a very big heart for people seeking God in these local communities. And what's interesting is, one of the core tenets of the Christian faith is to love your neighbor. It's like right up there. When Jesus was asked, okay, boil it all down, Jesus, like, what are the greatest commandments? Like, what are we really supposed to be doing? And he says, well, love God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, and love your neighbors yourself. It kind of all comes down to those things. And even like the 10 commandments break down in those categories, and you see it over and over again. We're supposed to be connected with our creator, rightly related to our creator, and rightly related to our fellow man. And so you would think that the people getting together every weekend and hearing that message would be killing it on loving people. But what tends to happen is you tend to have only about a quarter of the people who make up the churches, the ones who are actually practicing this loving their neighbor we're talking about. So you have a whole contingent of very cozy, comfortable people taking in a nice message and not really taking those steps of faith to love a neighbor, even if, at the current moment, they don't like their neighbor. And so to be honest with you, how is it going? I think it's actually one of the bigger challenges is to wake up some sleeping churches to really explode that untapped potential that is there, and so churches have been embracing the book and embracing the tool and having fun with it. And we're seeing stories. We see the most Grace Bomb stories coming in from the communities of faith who are embracing Grace Bomb and talking about it and sharing it and getting cards and doing it. And so that's very positive. It's a very positive sign. But, it just people to get out of their comfort zone and to get over their fears of, kind of putting themselves out there for something that's very deep and personal to themselves. So we're seeing fruit, but I also see immense opportunity for the world to become a better place when the people who kind of know that actually begin to practice that.
Yeah, and so this is off my line of questioning, but why do you think it is? Is it the old 80-20 rule? Is it that, yeah, they come for the message, but maybe really they're not 100% sold, they're still a little bit, what's the word? Dismayed by what we see in the world today. You think that's maybe leading to that?
Yeah. Why aren't people jumping in? That is such a good, that was a tangential question, but it's such a good question. And I don't know if it has a quick, easy answer. There's probably a lot of different variables for people in that regard. but part of, I grew up in church. And so there was definitely a period of time in my life where I liked going because it was familiar faces and it was friendly people, and
Community.
it was community, and my family was there. But if I was honest with you, when I heard some of the teachings to say, okay, pursue God first, for instance, before money, I would think, I feel like I
Well, you just
what I had to wrestle with personally was,
you
oh,
just
I'm sorry.
froze. You just froze.
Okay. Okay. So where did
it
I
was like
freeze?
about money and God.
Okay. Yes. So personally, I was just I was wrestling with really having to trust if God knew what he was talking about. Because so many of the things that we see in the scriptures are upside down. It's like, okay, blessed are the poor in spirit. It's like, what? I don't want to be poor in spirit. I want to be proud, and I want to be self-sufficient. Blessed are those who mourn and hunger and thirst for righteousness. I'm like, what kind of lame life is this? It's like Jesus is like, if you want to be the greatest, you have to serve and you have to be the least. I'm like, are you kidding me? The world is telling me I have to go and take what's mine and fight for it. And I think what a lot of people are wrestling with is, deep down, is a faith decision of, I wonder if God's way is the best way or not. And for those kind of buying into God's way being the best way, then they might be stepping out of their comfort zone and doing things like loving your neighbor, no strings attached. And the others, they just might be in a place of like taking it in and sort of wrestling, like, what is my top priority in life? Is it God or why I'm here or the greater purpose, or is it just like my security and my comfort? I think people kind of wrestle with that even inside of faith communities.
I think it's a bit of both. And I think, we've lost our way a little bit in the past 17 months. And so I think it is getting us to maybe make those decisions where, it is about, living and being more godlike. I think, that's my personal opinion. So I hear this idea of grace bombs on the TV show I saw. They went into a nursing home and they gave out Tim Hortons coffee cards and things like that. But how does it work exactly? Because you mentioned you've got these cards, and I've seen them on your YouTube channel and on your website. So how does it actually work? What does somebody get, and what do you give to somebody else? And then I just saw a video where you were at a restaurant. Chuck E. Cheese? Yes. And
yeah. Yes. So what you give can be as creative as you are. Basically, it's any investment of your time, treasure, or talents, the resources that you've been given that are very surprising to either spend or give to another person that seem to be like, whoa, why did you do that? That's kind of like what grace is. Grace is this idea. It's like, whoa, you did something for me that I didn't deserve and I didn't see it coming, right? It's like, oh, wow, where did that blast of kindness come from? Well, God is like that. And so it could be a financial blessing. We see those a lot. It could be taking your time to paint your neighbor's fence out of the blue, or cut their grass out of the blue, or it could be giving your expertise in a certain area where, wow, they would have to paid somebody for that insight. But you gave of yourself freely, and by way of a surprising gift. Now, what makes Grace Bomb different than just, random act of kindness? The Grace Bomb card has a simple connection that says, you've been grace bombed, gracebomb.org. Anyone who is interested or intrigued can just go look at gracebomb.org, and they can see that was not a random act of kindness per se, but it was an intentional act of love, and it was motivated from a deeper source, and that there's more love where that comes from. Because as amazing as random acts of kindness are, wouldn't it be really cool to then find out that joy and that love that you felt actually has a source, and there's more where that came from? And so that's what we want to communicate. We want to communicate the source of kindness. And we give Grace Bomb cards away for free all over the country and Canada. We have a team of people who just really believe in the vision, and we make all these resources available for free. There's actually cards also in the back of the Grace Bomb book as well.
Yeah.
And the card lets somebody know that there's more where this came from. And especially if you are spiritually inclined, it's helping you express your faith in a way that's not threatening. It's not churchy. You're not taking the Bible and thumping somebody, but you're showing them that God's leading edge is kindness. And
Yes.
we wanted them to experience a small taste of that.
Yeah, and abundance, and he's the source of
Yes.
all, or she, you know, depending on your inclination. So thanks for sharing that, because I really want to know how it worked, and I like that, the cards, and also just giving, whether it's tickets to. You didn't say what the tickets were. I think it was some sort of an event, but or whether it's
giving, the Chuck E. Cheese. So
yeah,
that one was funny because that came from a child who gave away all the tickets she won to get her prize at the end of the
gotcha.
time to another child. And so, although we also have seen people give tickets to sports games, we've seen people give away their good seats and trading people for bad ones, all kinds of fun things like that, just to let them feel some love. And part of what we do, if you want to hear some of the recent stories, really, we just try to use our social media to tell the stories of what's been happening around the country.
I'm going to get to that. I want to. I like the fact that you're focusing on your from a business point of view, your warm market first, which is churches. And if you love them and you have a passion and an understanding, that's a good business move, Pat. However, here's my question. One area that needs a little TLC is definitely mainstream organizations, companies. When do you feel you can take this concept mainstream and into companies, nonprofit organizations, and even government, Pat?
Well, there's definitely some. Yeah. Well, yes, we actually have partnered with some businesses, and they want to Grace Bomb. They want to have Grace Bomb cards on their storefront. In different pockets, we're seeing that because they want to do that because there's a principle of giving and generosity that they feel is important to incorporate into their business models. And, it's actually kind of prevalent today. You can see like give one, get one campaigns. There's usually a philanthropic arm to this. I'd say for the mainstream corporation, it's actually going to take a little more guts to incorporate Grace Bomb. Because you could take the principles of Grace Bomb and sort of strip away the spiritual component, but I kind of think it's an essential component. But you can strip it away, and let's say you can just change it to joy drops, and you do joy drops and just kind of keep it generic, and you surprise a neighbor in love, and they get to see that they were loved. If we can spur on even copycats, that'd be cool, because why not perpetuate the conversation of love in the community? But if somebody's actually going to take Grace Bomb as we've created it, it's going to take guts, because it's going to implicate spiritual things. And not every corporation is ready to incorporate spirituality or faith. It's almost taboo in a lot of circles, like, I can be a believer and I have a business, but if I blend the two, that might be awkward. And there could be backlash. But my proposition for an entrepreneur who also wanted to incorporate their spirituality or their faith into their business, my take on it is just be bold and go for it, because life is too short not to stand up for the things that you truly believe are important.
Yeah,
and
I agree.
Business is important. Creating good in the community is important. All those things. But I also contend that we're here for a reason. And we have to help people also know our ultimate reason and purpose on planet Earth is to know and to walk with our Creator. That's my belief. And so I'd want to communicate that as well. And that's going to take some guts, I think, for an organization to really say, yeah, we're going to partner with Grace Bomb because we know what they stand for. They're not just generic kindness. They're not just random kindness. They're pointing people to the source of kindness. And Grace Bomb is saying that source of kindness is Jesus. And, people are going to back away from that. That might be a little too hardcore. But that's okay. If we encouraged you to be creative and loving a neighbor with no strings attached, that's cool. Run with it as well.
So you were talking about some proud moments. What have been some proud moments so far of someone sharing a Grace Bomb? What's one or maybe two examples that you've heard about that's really touched your life, in your heart?
Yeah, well, Dave, I can tell you just from this week, because there's fun stories that have impacted my family, and I put some of those in the book, and there's a lot of stories float on social media. But I'll share this one, and it's like semi-confidential, but I think I'm okay to share. We got a Grace Bomb story that came in from a mom who was out at a restaurant with, I think, her in-laws and her son. And it was a very emotional time because it was her husband's birthday. And her husband was recently deployed to Afghanistan. And like right now, there's all kinds of turmoil happening real time in Afghanistan. But what happened was, unbeknownst to the neighbor who loved them, she described this person who they met, who was really nice and fun and engaging. And then at the end of the meal, that person came and took care of their check. And wished them well and gave them a Grace Bomb card. And so we're hearing this from the mom's perspective, but she was overwhelmed because what that person who did that for them didn't know was that her husband was deployed and is, they're all kind of nervous about what's happening right now, real time. And she shared that story, so thankful, so gracious with us this week. And we actually were moved from our organization side, and we don't do this all of the time, to contact her after she shared her story with us, just to say, hey, thank you for sharing. We understand this is a really heavy time right now. We asked if we could be praying for her and her husband, and if there's anything that we could do to help. And, so we had a little back and forth. And then because of that, the following day, she publicly released picture who happened to be her husband in Afghanistan with some of the folks, the children in Afghanistan, because the Department of Defense tweeted out this picture. It was this endearing picture of a soldier lovingly engaging these children. And she's like, hey, just wanted to share, like, this is my husband who we were talking about.
Wow. He was giving them water.
You guys had prayed for.
The picture was he was giving them water.
Yeah,
right?
he was giving them water, or one of them was wearing a helmet, and we were just like, thank you for sharing that with us.
Yeah.
Like, this is real stuff. And that was just from this week, and it hit home because here's the thing: when you have this desire to want to love a neighbor and to make the world a better place, you don't know what's happening in the life of that person who you're loving. And it could mean the world to them, depending on what their circumstances might be. And time again, we see stories like this. And then I come to think, like, I wonder if this is why God wants us to love our neighbor, because he knows that there's needs and there's hurt and there's pain. And part of his solution of helping is for us to be the ones who are helping each other. And so that was just one story that we kind of got to see a full circle moment and realize how deep it was going just from this week. And so that one was pretty impactful, actually.
So, yeah, I love it. And I like the Chuck E. Cheese one and how it inspired kids. And this is real. Like, this hits home because here's like, a messy situation happening across the world that affects us here and everywhere. Yet, amidst this chaos is love, right? So, and is hope. Yeah. And that to me is really, just amazing what you're doing. And I know I want to be a part of it with you down the road. I'm all for it. So, here you are, you're a pastor, but you have this notion of starting a movement detailed in the book. You said you wanted to be in business. So this venture of yours needs some pretty good marketing chops, So who's helped you get this message and book out? Have you had a team? Do you have a group of advisors, or is it just you and your family working it?
Yeah. So, and this could be of particular interest, especially if you're listening in and you're trying to, birth an idea into the world, and get your message out there. So in 2017, when we invented the tool, the Grace Bomb card and the website, we had a few people sitting around the table. I was kind of like the heartbeat behind, we need to get this out there. And behind every heartbeat, there's another heartbeat, because my wife was also saying, come on, man, like, let's do something. Then I had a few important people. I had someone who was very astute in the pulse of culture today. And so I think if you're birthing an idea out into the world, have someone in your corner that understands the trends, what people are looking at, what messages are being communicated. I had somebody, telling me right now, the pay it forward thing is very playful, and it's out there and it's working, and people are doing it. And you can kind of take that and leverage that thing in culture to, kind of springboard this message that's similar, but not the same. And so who is your kind of cultural guru? And then we had a graphic designer who really understood the elements of design. And I think, I would say one of the bare minimums, if you're branding out an idea, a business model, or whatever your idea might be, have graphic support. Because the stuff that I try to do on Adobe or whatever, it's junk. And I put it into the hands of somebody who knows what they're doing, and it's awesome. So it's worth the investment to have graphic people around you. And so I've kind of had that all along the way. And then when it came to the book, and if anybody out there, and Dave, you probably know this from experience, we all kind of have different publishing journeys. But I had a friend who had some experience with writing in the business world. And I was all about, let's publish. And he backed me off of that train to say, if you really want to get a publisher with wide distribution, you need to first get an agent to represent your idea. And this might be a little particular to the book writing world, but I would say having a literary agent is a feat in and of itself, just to kind of get someone thinking with you and putting your work out there and helping you think through book proposals and different stuff. But I had a literary agent. And then that ultimately led to an open door with David C. Cook, who published the book this year. And so, trying to figure out, who do I need next in my corner to help continue to push this idea out in a quality way? And I would also say for an entrepreneur, business people out there thinking about taking the next hill, don't rush the idea at the expense of your quality control, because you can take a great idea and kind of kill it, because so that might give you some idea of maybe who is on my corner as we continue to develop and to put this brand out there.
Yeah, I agree. Don't let, make sure you do it right and the first time, and then get it out. So what I'm hearing, I like how you've tailored our talk today to an entrepreneur and business and everything. So what I'm hearing is, don't be afraid, to express love and kindness within your organization, to your customers, to your team. I think we need more of that personally. I used to be in the promotions premium incentive industry years ago, and we would do corporate recognition programs for staff and teams, and that fed my soul. I got a few questions left, and so I like the fact that it is time now to maybe put God back into things. into our work. It's time to put God back into how we do things. It's time to put it into our neighborhoods. And God to me is love. It's this essence of love, and that's what the book is getting across: is love, grace, kindness. And I think we need more of that in every aspect of our life. So it's 1 year from now, Pat, and you and I are talking. What would you like to see unfold this time next year? What would you like? Where would you like to be?
Yeah, this time next year, I would like to have our resources very well developed for the church side of things, buttoned up, and churches kind of rolling with it, and communities of faith. But in a year from now, I want to be able to take the core concepts of Grace Bomb, where it comes from, even some higher level things like you just said. It's time to bring God back into the workplace, and I would ask, why is that? What will be helpful about that, and where does that come from? Some of those things I'd want to take that content and really help the movement across the country and beyond. I want to fan the flame of the broader movement while the boots on the ground churches are really getting into loving their neighbor. And so I'm kind of in pursuit 12 months from now to be able to deliver quality short 4 to 5 minute teaching nuggets via video through a very shareable platform, so that I can fan the flame of loving your neighbor and exploring the questions behind: is it time for God to come back? Is he even there? Is any of this real? Like, I want to have some of those broader conversations in a way that's sort of shareable and in people's pockets a year from now. We're kind of getting there. We're doing some things with radio right now. We've done largely our TV stuff has been promo, but I want to be able to create content that is on people's phones, highly shareable in video format, because I tend to do good work when I get to do those sorts of things. So yeah, in a year from now, that's what I like to see.
All right, I'm watching and I'm cheering you on.
All right, too. Cool.
All right, thanks. Couple more questions. In the time we've been in these last sort of 17 months, we seem to have forgotten kindness and love and God, as I mentioned, and it seems the fear of dying or getting sick, right, has taken over. Actually, the past 2 weeks, I don't know. It's like, did fear all of a sudden just ramp itself up? I just feel like all I'm seeing are fearful messages and stories. So how do you feel like, practicing, the Grace Bomb idea and the principles that you share and speak about and teach help us to ease our fear and ease our anxiety these days? Because anxiety's been through the roof for a lot of people I'm speaking to. Have been really in a state of anxiety, tiredness, fatigue. It's like battle fatigue. It's a spiritual battle. How does the principles in the book help ease our fear and anxiety?
Yeah, I actually have a whole chapter about overcoming our fears, blasting the barrier of our fears when it comes to particularly loving our neighbors. And there's a couple of very practical things. There's promises, particularly in the scriptures, and there's the ability to pray also to help alleviate fears. But I feel like if it's true, and if we can just think, critically, spiritually, with some depth, even just for a brief moment, if it's true that there's a creator, and we're not here by random chance or matter or time and space and just happen to pop in, but if there really is an intelligent mind, a creator behind the universe, and he's infinitely powerful, and if what he's communicating in the scriptures is true, that he's also loving, kind, benevolent, and in control, that's a big piece there.
Yeah, that's the trust factor.
Then that's a step of faith to say, okay,
yeah,
that means, okay, God, as crazy and as chaotic as the world is, you're still in control, and you can bring about good from bad. And, God tends to do that a lot in the scriptures. He takes what men meant for evil and he uses it for good. Even the phrase we've been talking about this whole time, Grace Bomb, it's a redemptive contrast. Bombs obviously have a negative, tragic connotation.
Yeah.
But we want to take that. We want to redeem that into a disruption, not of violence, but a disruption of love that can put something back together. Well, if it's true that God is in control and God is benevolent, kind, and loving, and he can be trusted, if all that's true, or maybe we need to explore that, and but let's just say for a second that's true, we can have peace because he's got a plan, he has a purpose, and he is in control. But that requires a step of faith on our part to actually believe that. But as we also see, like, God operates with us, his creatures, by way of faith. We have to trust what he says is true. And if we can take that step of faith, I think we can alleviate some of our fears and our anxieties. And a lot of people just need to start there. I would even you just need to pause and reflect. What am I doing here on planet Earth? Maybe I need to receive some love and grace first.
Yeah. And I hope that in this time that we're starting to think like that more and more, like what's it all about, and what am I here for? And Pat, this is a big reason why I started this podcast. I've been humming and hawing on this for about a year and a half. And I have growth plans for this, and it's to instill, spirit. And I find like entrepreneurship has really taken a hit here in Canada. I'm sure in the US too, with all the lockdowns and the closures and we're open, we're not open. So it's really taken a hit. And the word, there's another definition of God, and it's spirit. And spirit means to breathe life into something. And we need to bring life and breathe life into everything I think we do these days. What's your take on that?
Yeah, you see that idea of spirit all throughout the scriptures, and one of the ways God is described in the scriptures is a spirit, right? Like, God's not anatomical male or female. We're clearly told God is spirit, and it's that spirit, it's that wind, it's that force, it's that love that we get to put into the world as a reflection of our Creator. And, so much of what we're talking about, love and kindness and our neighbors in this community, it's like, this is part of what we've been made for. And there's one particular Bible verse, and I know that, some of us might not have even
go for it.
Brim of a Bible. But there's one particular Bible verse that is really important to Grace Bomb itself. And it comes from the New Testament, and it comes from a guy named Paul. He used to be kind of an opponent of Christianity. He was persecuting Christians and really not cool with the whole thing. But, there in the scriptures, you can read what happened to him. And he would go on to actually write most of the New Testament. And he wrote to a little church community in Ephesus. And it's in the letter to the Ephesians in chapter 2, verse 10. And he says, "For we are his workmanship." He's saying that we are God's handiwork, his poem. We are his masterpiece. We've been put together. And in this particular verse, it says, we are his workmanship, created in Christ Jesus, meaning that somehow through the person of Jesus, we've been reassembled, we've been made new, we've come alive for a purpose. And that purpose is for good works that God has prepared in advance for us to walk in. And so when I think about that verse from the Bible, the little phrase that pops into my mind is, oh, we are grace-built people that are meant to grace bomb people. We have been loved by God. That doesn't mean life is easy and awesome all the time, but we have air in our lungs, and the sun is rising and the rain is falling, and we're met with provision and kindness every single day. And we are, we have come to this place as grace-built people by his love. But then he says it's for the purpose of giving that grace out and giving it away. And you mentioned spirit and who God is and who we are. And in so many ways, we're kind of this reflection of being able to just put him on display in the world. And it's kind of an exciting proposition that there's these, maybe divine appointments out there that we have to walk in.
Yeah. And, I teach a business plan boot camp to a lot of students, and they start off with having them create a vision and a mission. And the vision, I quote the Bible in my workshop, with there's no vision, the people perish. And, and I'm seeing a real lack of vision in politics and business and just, in those two realms for sure. And I think we need to ignite our vision, ignite our hope, and bring all the concepts that you've talked about in the book Grace Bomb into every aspect of our lives, family, neighborhoods, communities. I think if we're going to build back, we got to build that way, So yeah. Pat, we're out of time. So where do we connect with you to learn more about you?
Yeah, you can just check out www, as the whole internet goes these days, gracebomb.org.
And the book's there.
Cards, you can.
Oh, cool.
You can get links to the book. The book's all over the place, Amazon, bookstores. It's out in the world. But if you want to take a little deeper look into what in the world I've been talking about, you can definitely start at gracebomb.org.
Okay. And you're also on YouTube as well. And there's videos about you and the work you're doing. So I'm so grateful to have you today. What a joy. Really was. I'll just close the show here. That was Pastor Pat Linnell, and he joined us from his home in Maryland. I think he's going to not grace bomb, but I think he's going to bomb the Baltimore Orioles team and start again. Because Maryland, and I don't know if you follow baseball, people that are watching and listening, but Baltimore has not had a really good run this season. Thank you for being part of RiSE, the podcast. Our goal, again, is to inspire or breathe life into individuals like you listening and watching, to rise up, inspire, and make an impact, and be socially aware and continue the entrepreneurial spirit to make life in the world a better place. So join us next week as we welcome Lisa Jones from the Global Goodwill Ambassadors Foundation. Until then, I'm your host, David Cohen. It's been a joy being with our guest today, Pat Linnell. And until next week, have a great week and stay well and rise up.